Hey, and welcome back to another edition of Skinslip's 2015 Scavenger Hunt. This is part 6. If you haven't been following along, there will be a link to the main video, which is the main contest entry, which has a link to Skinslip's channel, the contest video, as well as to 10 more, including this video, additional entries with separate reviews, as well as a playlist of everything all together. So if you're interested in other things, just go down to the description, click on it, and it'll send you over. Essentially what this is he's got 10 criteria to meet, each one being a different film, and you can't duplicate any films. So part 6 here is he wants a slasher film without a franchise or sequel. And so for my choice, I picked Cherry Falls. Now, this may be the only release of Cherry Falls. I don't know. I could be wrong. But I called it, this release here, I call this the Rest in Peace release. Simply because it's 2 movies, Cherry Falls and Terror Tract. Terror Tract stars John Ritter. John Ritter is no longer with us. Cherry Falls stars Brittany Murphy. Brittany Murphy is no longer with us. So the stars of both of these films, even though neither of them are like old, they weren't old when they passed away. These movies aren't old. Unfortunately, both are no longer with us. So let's get to Cherry Falls. The thing with Cherry Falls is, it's a weird thing. I know about Cherry Falls, oddly enough, due to university. We studied it in class. I was taking a horror film class, and I'm pretty sure, I could, if memory serves me correct, Cherry Falls was being released on the day, one of the days that, well, you know, I had this particular class, and the professor was calling all around to see if essentially she could find the movie. And this release is from USA Home Entertainment, so it's not like it's from a huge, distribution company or movie company or whatever, like Paramount or Universal or anything like that. And so eventually she did find it. She, called around all morning. We had a later class. It was way, late in the afternoon. So eventually she found it, and literally she got it to us at that, maybe 10 minutes before class started. I think she ended up being late, but she was, on campus essentially when class was starting, and she got to class a little bit late. So she just got it in time. And we didn't know that we were going to be covering this movie in class, but, she wanted to check it out. And she hadn't seen it yet, but she knew about it. And so we studied it because Cherry Falls is... A lot of what we were studying was tropes of the genre, sexuality, how things are perceived, how things are displayed. And one of the things with slasher films is sexuality and the if you've seen things like Scream and such, the rules, right? And one of them is don't have sex. If you have sex, you're gonna die. So this is a slasher film, but in this slasher film, essentially the concept behind it is the slasher is only killing virgins. So you gotta lose your virginity in order to stay alive. And yeah, I enjoy Cherry Falls. I think it's one of those films that it kind of missed the ball here. For a film about teenagers and sex and sexuality and finding their sexuality and experimenting, it really is missing one key thing. Sex, sexuality, and exploration of those type of things. There's no nudity. There's supposed to be an orgy in the film, and because, you know, essentially they find out, you know, the school finds out that the killer's killing virgins. So all the kids in this high school decide that they're going to go have a sex party, and they're all going to partner up and go have sex all in this one thing, all at the same time, all together. And it starts off as like a house party, and I'm like, okay, I get some people being a little awkward and such, but I'm sure there's people here who wouldn't have any problem. And aren't you all afraid you're going to die? Why is everybody taking their time to have this thing sex, right? Like, everybody's game, everybody's going for it, everybody wants to have it, but nobody's actually having it. No, they're pairing. I get the pairing up part. If you don't have a partner, or you didn't pick a partner before the prom type thing, then, you know, whatever, you got to find a dance partner while you're there. But for anybody who partnered up beforehand, I mean, they're carrying dudes carried mattresses to this place. You would think, all right, just get to it, but no, they're having a party, and there's music, and people are dancing, and they're slow dancing, and I'm just like, are you supposed to be having sex? And then later on, they bust in, and everybody's sort of, they're no longer dancing. Where are they? Oh, they're upstairs having sex. Except all of them they're all in their underwear. Nobody's naked. I don't get it. I don't think any of these kids know how to have sex. Because what's going on? So, yeah, it really misses the boat in that sense. Again, it's not very gory either. It says here it's like rated R, but I'd say it's PG-13 at best. I think it's basically subject matter is what gives it an R, because there's not much in terms of gore. There's a little bit of blood, but you don't really see anything. It's more after effects, and mostly just blood on people's faces and stuff. And then when it comes to, like I said, the sex and such, it's implied, it's hinted at, it's never actually shown. So, I mean, those are two things that, you know, most diehard old school slasher films and such, they're going to key off of, because that's the exploitation point. That's what people want, you know, the guys and the who are really into this genre, really, you know, they're on that. They love to see the kills. Kills aren't much of anything here, so where are you going to pick up the viewers? You're either going to get it in the gore, no gore, because the kills aren't really there, so got to go with the sex, right? It missed the mark. It should be the sex. Cherry Falls should be the sex, but alas, it is not. But I have to say, this film does have a really, really good set of cast and such. It's directed by a guy named Jeffrey Wright. Never heard of him before. The guy's done like 6 movies, and none of Cherry Falls is the only one I know. But he did do apparently a version of Macbeth starring Sam Worthington, if that means anything. Of course, like I said, it's got Brittany Murphy right there. She's, you know, all sorts of stuff. The Prophecy 2, Drop Dead Gorgeous, Girl Interrupted, 8 Mile, Riding in Cars with Boys. Essentially all the episodes of King of the Hill. She's a voice actor, in case you didn't know. Most people are going to know her from either Clueless or, for me, Don't Say a Word. I'll never tell. Yeah, so, of course, I didn't really say that like she said it. Either way, you know, if you know what I'm talking about. The next one up would be Jay Moore, who... you know what? I had thought he had done a lot more that I was, you know, recognized, but he really hasn't. Ghost Whisperer, Are We There Yet? I think the black, I think it's mostly black cast comedy type thing. I think he's like the only white guy in it. I can't remember. And his latest thing is he's the title character for a show called Gary Unmarried. Never heard of it. But most people are probably going to know him either from Saturday Night Live. He was on like almost 40 episodes of Saturday Night Live. Or for me, I know him from Jerry Maguire, right? I think that's probably where most people are going to know him from. This is him right here. right? So, and then next one up would be Michael Biehn, and you got to know Michael Biehn. He was The Seventh Sign, The Abyss, Navy SEALs, K2, Tombstone, Clock Stoppers, Planet Terror, some of the new movies, Sushi Girl, if you saw that, or The Victim, and I think one of his best roles that he's ever done, The Divide. But most people are going to know him from Aliens. Come on, you know him from Aliens. Another person who you'll probably, if you watch it, you'll recognize him, but you may not know who he is. And he was in Flags of Our Fathers. He played Balthazar in that 1996 Romeo and Juliet movie. But for me, I recognize him as, Joey from Hackers. Like Joey was when he was a lot younger. Or same year, Cherry Falls came out the same year. He's the dorky brother in Bring It On. So there you go. But he's only at the beginning of the movie, so he's somebody who's really could have been used better in this film is Candy Clark. Candy Clark, she was the mother of Buffy from the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie. She's from Zodiac. She did a whole slew around the 80s horror movies and such, with like Blue Thunder, Amityville 3D, Cat's Eye, The Blob. She was in Q the Winged Serpent. But I think most people, oddly enough, are going to know her from her earliest works, as she played the character of Debbie from American Graffiti and the sequel, More American Graffiti, oddly enough. And yeah, so that's essentially the main people in this. But it's funny because this film not just had, people who had already established themselves, but it had a lot of people who went on to establish themselves, or had a lot of, you would recognize them if you saw them because of stuff that they've done since. One is Douglas Spain. I recognized him when I saw him, and I was like, where do I know that guy from? And, I had to go to IMDb. I had to go to check him out, and I was like, where do I know him from? I know him from something. And it's from something I watch annually. He is Private Antonio Garcia from Band of Brothers. And I was like, that's where I know that guy from. So, I mean, he hasn't done a huge amount of anything, really big, but it's funny. A single role can define somebody to you, and that's where I know him from. That's where I recognize him from. I wouldn't recognize his name. I just know the face from Band of Brothers. So when I saw him, and this is, this was before Band of Brothers, much younger. Another one is, and I'm gonna get his name wrong. It's Malicki-Sánchez. Maybe I didn't get it wrong. And he was in the movie John Q, Punisher Warzone, Texas Chainsaw 3D, and a bunch of other stuff. He's done voice acting and stuff. But for Canadians, if you watch your television, your Canadian television, he was on Catwalk, if you remember that show. And here's the kicker. You recognize him if you remember Zardip's Search for Healthy Wellness. He is Zardip. So go look up Zardip's Search for Healthy Wellness. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's worth the laugh. Carol Malicki-Sánchez. And then finally, DJ Qualls is in this film. This is actually one of his first films, and he's not a guy who you really know. He somehow, I think people have recognized his name. Like, you recognize his name, you definitely recognize his face. But it's funny, like, since this movie, he's gone on and done other stuff. He did The Core, and then he sort of went in this, and it totally works for him. He went into the comedy with The New Guy and Delta Farce and the road trip movies. I think most people are going to know him from the road trip movies. But if you didn't, you know, you haven't seen all these movies from, you know, back in the day, like 10 years ago, he's currently on Z Nation. So, yeah, it's got a huge amount of people that you either had a career beforehand, ended up with a career afterwards, or, you know, just were in the middle of their careers, really, you know, like, and, yeah, it's, movie came out in year 2000, and you know what, I recommend it. It's not the best slasher film, but it plays on some of the tropes of the genre, and it's a little fun watch. It's nice seeing Brittany Murphy again, you know, like, just going back. Michael Biehn actually plays her father, the town sheriff, so he's a little bit of a hard nose, and Jay Moore is her teacher, and Candy Clark is her mom, and yeah, it's one of, I don't know, it's one of those films. It's I don't know, I don't think a lot of people know about it. People in the horror world, I think, picked up on it. I think they picked up on it when it was released, and it's kind of stayed with us, and people like me will bring it up every once in a while, and as such, it sort of had this little bit of staying power. But I don't know, it's not one of those things that people really, they latch onto, and I think it's too bad. It's too bad. I think it could get a little bit more recognition. Like I said, if it had more gore or more nudity and more sex and stuff like that, then there'd be more enticing things to watch. But as it is, it's just like, you watch it, it has an interesting story, a little bit of a twist, but once you've seen the twist, then it's just like, okay, then it's just sort of an interesting story, and nothing else really happens. So its rewatch value isn't that great, even though I've probably watched it, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 times. I don't know how many times I've watched it. I watch it every few years. And anytime somebody does one of these things, I tend to bring out Cherry Falls just to, I don't know, champion it or something. I don't know why I'm championing this film. Honestly, if you're into slasher films, it's worth checking out. If you're not into slasher films, it's pointless. There's not much to it. Yeah. I don't know. Check it out. Cherry Falls, starring Brittany Murphy, Michael Biehn, and Jay Moore. So, yeah, stay tuned. There's going to be more videos, because this was only part 6, and there's 10 parts to Skinslip's Scavenger Hunt 2015. Till next video, take care, and have a good one.